Gaming setups can cost a ridiculous amount of money. Just the one behind me, for example, if you total in the price of my PC and then everything else, you're looking at just under 4, even 5 grand if you include the laptop. Now, all of this is not necessary if you're just wanting a basic gaming setup that you can just play games on casually, then you don't really want it for any other extra features such as making videos. However, if you're wanting to play games on a budget, I've got 2 main options for you that will allow you to play it on an actual proper budget, and then in terms of PC gaming, there's no real way of budgetly playing PC games in the manner that you can play, for example, on a console. So to begin, let's talk about the most budget way of playing games, which isn't available just yet, but will be soon, which relies on cloud gaming, which yes, you can do. For example, if you already have a laptop, then you can cloud game just using your Wi-Fi onto the laptop. However, the next thing is going to be based off of Samsung's new TVs that are going to be coming with the Game Pass app on there, so you can cloud game to that. So all you need is an Xbox Game Pass subscription and an Xbox controller, which they're now trying to push more and more for people to go for custom controllers, which really, I do understand, it costs virtually the same as buying a normal controller. It's your personal controller that you can use whenever you want for cloud gaming. And honestly, it's actually a great idea when you consider that really your upfront cost is going to be about £75, including your first month of Game Pass, and then after that you're looking at $10.99 a month every single month until you decide that you don't want to play on Game Pass anymore, which really is something that I'm going to be looking forward to, especially if Sony has some form of deal in the future that they can put it onto apps on TVs as well, because really think about it, you could play tons of titles for basically about £25 a month and have a great time doing so. However, the other thing that really needs to be taken into account is basically, where do your friends play? If you're wanting to get a gaming setup for the focus of just playing single player games, it doesn't really matter. I'd just say go for whichever console you would like, probably going to be the PS5 as they have more story-driven, rich games on PlayStation. But if you're also wanting to play a massive variety of games that also allow you day one access to loads of exclusive Xbox content, then I'd definitely say just go for an Xbox with Game Pass or a PC with Game Pass. But yes, it does really matter where your friends play, because really you don't want to be playing on a console and then you can't play with any of your friends. Yes, a lot of games are cross-play now, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to jump through hoops to talk to each other. But besides where your friends play, you also need to take into account what type of games you want to play, and if something like Game Pass or PS Plus is something that you actually think needs to be on your checklist. But one main thing can also be the exclusives that both consoles offer. For example, on the Xbox, you've got access to the Forza franchise, Halo, Sea of Thieves, and many other future Bethesda titles. Or over on PlayStation, you have access to games like Ghost of Tsushima, the Horizon games, Spider-Man, Death Stranding, The Last of Us, and God of War, and as well as that, the Uncharted series. However, sadly, PlayStation doesn't allow you access for day one exclusives with their PlayStation Plus, and that doesn't really matter where you play it, on PlayStation or on PC. As really, I would say one of the key things for me when it comes to the PlayStation's version of the Game Pass versus Xbox's Game Pass is that really all you're getting of PlayStation's Game Pass is you're getting a lot of good games. However, there isn't actually as many as people like to make it out to be. Because if I now go through the catalogue of PlayStation games, I'm going to go from them from terms of A to Z as it's listed on their website and go through a lot of the big games that they have on there that really, a lot of them are great games. Some of them are okay, and some of them are absolute trash. So what we're going to begin with is Arkham Knight, which honestly isn't too bad of a title. I enjoyed it when it first came out, however I also know that a lot of people did enjoy it and did also hate it. And then on there as well, there's Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which if you've watched this channel before, there is a video a good while ago that basically is just my opinion of Valhalla. It's also in my Lazarus response to video. I hate the game. I think it's a dreadful experience. Generally, I'm surprised I got 70 hours in. Like, it's very just tempting to play and you can enjoy it. However, it's not an Assassin's Creed experience. It was marketed and sold on the premise that it was going to be an Assassin's Creed title. However, it wasn't. And I'm going to list off a few other games on there as well real quick. You've got Far Cry 3 and 4, Fallout 4, For Honor, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Kingdom Come Deliverance, Spider-Man and the Miles Morales Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2 and the Uncharted series. Now, a lot of those games are amazing in their own right, such as Far Cry 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, you've got Ghost of Tsushima, and Last of Us, for example. However, you've also got a lot of bloat on there, and I'm not saying Game Pass doesn't, I'm just saying that in terms of it, I don't think it's as great of an experience that gets marketed as some people like to believe, and a lot of Sony fanboys do like to try and claim. However, another thing that I'm not a fan of when it comes to what they did with their version of Game Pass is the factor that you have to pay just to be able to play backwards compatible games. Which now makes the question come along of, do you really actually own the game that you have the disc to? Yes, not all Xbox 360 games are backwards compatible, however a lot of them are. And that's great because it means that if I want to play an older game that I've had on disc for over 10 years now, I can just go, okay, I'm going to go pop it in the Xbox, play it, enjoy it. I don't have to rebuy the game just so that I can experience it again, and I'm not going to have to pay an extortionate extra rate just to be able to play the games again. I don't see why that needs to be the case. If Xbox have been able to do this for so many years, but PlayStation decided to hide it behind a paywall, it just seems a little bit scummy to me. So really, if you're actually wanting the best gaming experience for a cheaper price, personally I would recommend an Xbox with Game Pass, mainly due to the amount of games that they have on there, such as the BSG titles like Skyrim, Oblivion, the Fallout series, Dishonored, and then you've also got Far Cry 5 currently, A Way Out, Ark, Assassin's Creed Origins, Battlefield games, you've got the Doom games, the Dragon Age games, Hitman, Hollow Knight, and those are just some of the 400 plus games in the catalogue. And yes, I'm 100% aware that those games are not just 100% amazing games like the other ones. They are honestly, a lot of them are bloat. However, to have 400 games on Game Pass for $10.99 a month is very good and a great deal, especially for people who just want to play a lot of games or try out a lot of games. So generally speaking, my personal preference is Game Pass. I do think it is a better deal currently. If they give access to, let's say, day one exclusives on the PlayStation now eventually, and they also get rid of the paywall for backwards compatible games and just allow people to play their old games, then I'll basically just take my entire opinion back and say that they're pretty much on par with each other at that point. If not, Sony could end up scraping it slightly just because they have got better single-player game experiences. Okay, now that I'm actually away from the topic of Game Passes, which I do like to talk about just because I do think it is the way forward for a lot of game companies, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of it. For example, we know that Netflix is looking to do something similar in the future over the next year or so to have a good few titles that you can play through them. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see even more companies pop up, but I do think that Microsoft just have the capital to completely outbeat the competition, which is kind of what they've been doing for a good few years now. But anyway, let's now talk about budget PC gaming, and then we're going to move on to kind of like accessories afterwards. So if you don't care about PC gaming, don't worry, skip to the timestamp where we start talking about accessories. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's very hard to have a budget PC gaming experience. A great example of this was that I decided to save up my money when I first got a job, and I saved up $2,000 to build the PC that I really wanted to build, which is the one just there. I built that at the beginning of 2019. I absolutely loved it for a good month or so. That was the high for ages, and I haven't felt any high since, and I really do want to build another PC at some point. However, it did set me back $2,000. Yes, you could argue about £300 of that I didn't need to spend, because an extra £300 was the changing of a lot of fans, RGB, and paying extra for things like, you know, an RGB motherboard and the RGB for the RAM sticks. So yes, if you don't want that, you don't have to pay the extra amounts, but I did just because I thought it looked cool. But with that $2,000, I ended up buying at the time a 2070, an i7-8700 with 16 gigs of RAM, and honestly, I can play almost every single game I have tried at the highest quality settings and get around 60 FPS, and then a lot of games at medium at 120. However, again, this did cost me $2,000 to build, and if you're looking to build the same PC, you're still looking at spending about $1,500 to $1,800 if you build with the exact same parts as I did. And really, that also depends on if you can just buy a used 2070 or if you buy one brand new, as it's very hard to get a lot of good quality graphics cards for cheap right now, and it has been for the last few years. But if you want to play games on PC and you don't want to spend $2,000, I'm going to be honest, if you want to play games and have them run well, I will probably say to you that you should either just buy a pre-build, for example, just buy a laptop, gaming laptop for about £800. You'll probably get a good deal with that, and honestly just plug it into a monitor, hope for the best. A lot of them are actually quite good now. Or look at saving about $1,000 and you can probably get away with the bare minimums for some things and having a little bit better graphics card in return, a little bit better processor and the 16 gigs of RAM. As really, yes, you can play games with 8 gigs of RAM, however, I would still recommend just jumping up to 16, just because if you decide that you want to do more than gaming in the future, you're kind of future-proofed for that. But yeah, I'd probably say go for about $1,000 if you're going to be going into it, which I understand that is not budget, but really it is very hard to have a budget gaming PC, which is why I do have a video talking about the idea of how gaming on PC has got a higher threshold to enter than console gaming, and a lot of people who basically try to turn around and say Xbox is dying or PlayStation is dying, PC is literally the best thing going. That's the reason why I think they're wrong, is because there will always be a market for people who don't want to play on PC all the time, because one, nobody likes tryharding most of the time hunched over their desk, but secondly, not everyone has the money to be spending $1,000 to $2,000 just right away to build a PC. However, that $1,000 was based off of these cheaper components, for example, of a Ryzen 5 600X, 16 gigs of Corsair RAM and a 3060, and the rest of the components being more cheaper than what you might want to spend on some of them. However, you can do it for $1,000 and have a decent budget PC. That $1,000 though is based off just the PC experience of the actual unit of the PC. That's not including your peripherals, so you're going to be looking at spending a bit more than that, probably about $1,400 probably, depending on where you get your parts from and what you're going for and what type of quality you want. But really, this shows you that you could, for the same price as paying for a PC, get an Xbox or get a PS5 and just pay for their versions of Game Pass, have access to tons of different games, and with that, all you need is literally about 2 years worth of either or for the same price, including the console, and you've got a very good gaming experience going for the same amount of money, but it lasts you over a longer period of time, and you don't have to pay out even more extras and extras along the way. I do know that technically Game Pass will make its money purely because there's so many people buying it, and so many people will just forget to cancel the subscriptions and so on if they don't want it anymore. However, I do think that it's just a better service overall than just buying a PC gaming rig just for the sake of saying that you can play on PC. Really, you should just play where your friends play. That's my main thing more than anything. So if they do play on PC, go for it. However, do not expect to be able to enter PC gaming on a cheap basis. Then in terms of peripherals, this can change a little bit depending on what you're going for. One of the main things, for example, is that a lot of people want to play with at least a 120Hz TV or monitor, because they might be playing on, let's say, a console that allows those refresh rates, which you can currently get about 120Hz TVs right now for about £700 to even £900, depending on how much you're looking to spend and the quality of the display that you're after. It can go way above that £900 mark if you want to, but really you can still get some on decent deals for around about £700. So that's going to be one of your first expenditures if you don't already have it, but if you already have a TV, you're okay with that for now, and until you play at 120Hz, you're not really going to notice a difference until you actually do. However, if you're wanting a monitor of the same caliber by any means, you're looking at spending around about £600 to £800. Guaranteed. It's very hard to find a good, cheaper end monitor that is 4K at 120Hz and not be spending the same amount on TV. Really, you're getting a smaller screen and everything like that. Yes, sure, the refresh rates can be better. You can go up to 144Hz and so on. But really, you're basically going to end up spending the same amount of money when it comes to that main peripheral, which is what you're looking at most of the time. However, though, if you do just want to just get into playing them and you don't really care what you're using, you can buy an easy TV that's basically just a standard 4K. You can get that for about £300 currently. You can also find some monitors around the 180 mark, 200. There is at least 144Hz. However, don't expect it to be at 4K resolution by any means. Now, the main answer really to this question is going to really rely on how much you're wanting to spend on a keyboard and mouse. But if you're playing on console, you don't necessarily need to. You can if you want to. However, I wouldn't advise it. You might as well just play with the controller, as there's no point of spending an extra like £100 on having a better, more functional keyboard or mouse. That can go even higher. But really, for me, I would recommend the Keychron K2 as a wireless keyboard. It's about £80 currently. And then really, after that, I'd probably say something like the Logitech G502 wireless is a great answer if you're wanting something that's a bit more expensive for a mouse. But also, you've got actually some really good Razer ones currently, and there is other Logitech ones that if you don't care about having it wired, then you might want to go for the G502 wired instead, as it's a bit cheaper. And then one of the other ones is gaming headsets, which really I don't care for. I used to use them all the time. However, I don't care for them now. I just use my Sony MX3s purely because, one, the audio quality in them is 10 times better, and as well, they're nowhere near as big and clunky as you would get with the other ones that you can buy, for example, from Razer, HyperX, or Logitech. But if you're looking for a good quality pair that is going to last you a good amount of time, I'd recommend the Cloud 2 HyperX headsets just because they're actually really good quality, especially for the price. So with that all being said, if you want to actually have a budget gaming experience, you're looking at spending about £500 to £600 just to get started with console gaming, for example. But if you want to get started in PC, you're probably looking at about £1,500 after you've considered into account the peripherals, if you're wanting Game Pass or PlayStation Now on that as well, buying extra games, paying for all the parts and so on. So it's not really an easy method to do. But in terms of what you're going to have the desk on, personally, I don't think there's any doubt. If you want a cheap desk, just go to IKEA. There's no point of me talking about, oh, go to these different companies, as it's very hard to find a cheap desk. However, do expect them to break easily. So if you're someone like me who does lose their temper very easily at games as well, don't buy an IKEA desk. You will regret it. They're very easy. They're not made with the highest quality. It's why they are as cheap as they are. So just make sure that you buy something that is, one, good for you in general. But if you're just wanting something cheap that you're going to use, maybe even just for productivity bases, just buy an IKEA desk. It'll cost you like £100 maximum for everything that you want for it. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and do subscribe for more content in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.